Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are here sharing their expertise and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions, where we help businesses scale using outside-the-box visibility and automation strategies. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're glad you're here today, and you're in for a treat because I'm excited to be talking with my guest today, who I'm going to introduce right now, Mr. Dave Pennington with Penn Coaching. So welcome, Dave, to the podcast.
Thanks, Heidi. It's good to be with you today. Looking forward to having a good conversation and hopefully helping some of the folks that listen.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. So Dave, can you share with us a little bit about yourself, about Penn Coaching and your role within it?
Sure. I'm the founder and owner of Penn Coaching Consulting. This is actually kind of I would say my third career, if I want to word it that way. Believe it or not, I actually started in ministry a number of years ago. Had a lot of experience, mostly mid to larger size organizations, usually with a private school. So, our budgets could run $3 to $5 million in some cases. Then I have a stint where I was involved in private education. I've been head of school, I think, of about 5 schools or so, executive director of a state group with 37 schools in it, president of a state group on a national board, adjunct prof, bunch of educational things. And then about 10 years ago, I started Penn Coaching and Consulting. I kind of just took a lot of my experience from leading organizations and scaling and growing organizations, went through some training, got certified as a coach, and then moved in to the coaching space. I've kind of had a few iterations. I started more in the leadership coaching space because I found that most of the time when I was trying to help businesses or organizations, as I would lean in, I would say, kind of lift the hood, kick the tires, almost inevitably it would come down to there was a leadership issue somewhere, and so I really focused on that initially. Then I've also done, and I still do all of these, I also have worked with scaling. I've always been really good at just kind of structuring organizations to scale. I find that most business owners become the ceiling of their companies and they try to do too much and they reach a point of saturation where they can't do any more. And so the company just stops growing. And then about a year and a half ago, I made one other pivot where I went through some certifications in the evaluations and acquisition area. And that has to do with the ability of helping people understand the value of their company and then what they can do to scale it if that's what they want to do, or to position themselves to sell it one day. And so that's what I've been leaning in on. I bumped into a research area. They call it the silver tsunami, where there are boomers. I'm a boomer, so I can connect with that are aging out. And many of them in the next 5 years are going to be transitioning out of their companies, and they estimate that somewhere around $10 trillion with a T is going to change hands, and that many of those businesses will not ever even sell because they're not positioned to sell, and that most of the business owners don't really have an exit strategy or plan. So I'm really focusing on that and just trying to help people prepare so that they can walk away with a good income for retirement and not leave money on the table.
I love that you're doing that because it supports people in their next journey, the next chapter, right? To set them up for success.
Yeah, and they don't have to be older to sell. I mean, a lot of people will build a business, sell it, and then build another business. And there are advantages in that because you learn a lot about how to build it as you build it. And some things maybe, if I do it again, I'm not going to do it that way. It didn't work very well. So you get a fresh start. And so it doesn't really matter the age. The big thing is just really having it positioned where it's valuable, number one, and number two, it's sellable. It's attractive to buyers.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in coaching because no matter where you're at or what if you're trying to make a change or move into your next step, it's important that you're getting supported because these business owners, they're successful, right? They know how to build a business. They know how to grow a business and scale, but they don't necessarily know how to sell it.
That's correct. They've never done it. They've never done it before.
They've never done it. Right. Yeah. So why not bring in somebody that does? So can you share with us the difference between effective coaching in a business context and how that's different from consulting or mentoring?
Well, I find they kind of overlap a little bit, but typically a consultant is going to come in, sort of do an evaluation, perhaps make some recommendations, maybe leave you a nice folder that you can put on your shelf and maybe never use, and then leave. Now sometimes you can be a consultant who helps execute, That's a little different model. But coaching, at least the way I do coaching, I kind of view myself as a non-equity strategic partner. So I don't own any equity within someone's company, but I function like a partner. And I get in the ditch with the owners and help them strategize, give them a kind of a sounding board to bounce things out off of. I usually say it this way. It's kind of funny. I say, when you own a business, you've got to talk to someone. You can't just talk to anyone. And let's be honest, if you're married, your spouse is tired of hearing about it.
Yeah.
So I love helping owners be able to, kind of project ahead, envision where they want to go, and then develop a roadmap to get from where they are to where they want to ultimately end up being.
So when someone comes to you, when your client comes to you feeling stuck, what's the first thing that you look at to diagnose what the real issue is?
Well, it's not the same for everyone. I usually begin with the owner just because I find that there's a lot of value there. One of my goals in my life is what I would call impact. And I call, when I work with the owner, the pebble in the pond concept. When you throw a pebble in the pond, there's a ripple effect. And so if I can help the owner grow and develop and structure his company or her company properly, it has a ripple effect and it affects everybody in that person's family and everybody in that organization and in their families. So that's very attractive for me. And often I find that probably there's a couple common themes. Number one, most owners are trying to do too much. I understand when you start something, you've got to do a lot at first. But then as your company grows, you need to grow as a leader and adjust what you're doing and particularly what you're choosing not to do. The second theme I find quite often, our common theme, is they're often working more or as much in their weaknesses as they are in their strengths because they kind of learn to do a lot of things, but they don't necessarily like doing those things and they're not necessarily good at doing those things. But, maybe sometimes they're trying to save money, maybe they're trying to maintain control. There's different reasons. In fact, I'll tell you a story that I had a client a while back who was kind of I would say a tech client. He had a business where he actually bought and sold fonts internationally, which is kind
So
of
what?
really fonts, F-O-N-T.
Fonts.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
so
what I thought you
really
said. Okay.
niche. And as
Yeah.
I started working with him, I'll say his name was Joe. It wasn't Joe, but I'll just use the name Joe. I said, well, Joe, tell me a little bit about what you're doing in your company. He says, well, I do this, this, and this, and I do all the financials. And I said, really? You do payables, receivable, payroll? You do all that? He said, yeah, I do all that. So I said, you like doing that stuff? He said, not really. And I said, are you good at doing that stuff? He said, no, not really. And I said, well, how much time does it take you? He says, oh, about 8 to 10 hours a week. I said, okay. So I said, well, Joe, let me ask you a question. What if I looked at your salary and package, benefit package, what are you worth an hour? He thought about it for a minute and he says, oh, I'm about a 250 an hour guy. I said, okay. I said, look, I've got a deal for you. I want to do your financials. I'll do payables, receivables, payroll. I'll do all that. It's only going to take me 10 hours a week and I'm only going to charge you $250 an hour. What do you think? He kind of paused and he just started laughing. And then he said, I guess I'm really paying that, aren't I? I said, yeah, you really are. I said, you realize you could get a bookkeeper, $35, $40, $45 an hour. Probably wouldn't take him 10 hours a week because he actually knows what he's doing. And then secondly, let me ask you this question. What could you do in your company if I could give you back 10 hours every week of your life? What difference would that make in your company? And so for him, it became kind of a paradigm shift because he thought he was really saving money and helping his company. He actually was wasting a lot of valuable time and probably limiting the scaling and growth of his company. And I see
Yeah.
that a lot with business owners.
Yeah. I love how you come in and you can open their eyes to a different perspective because when we're in it, we kind of like go in sometimes as a business owner with our blinders on, right? We're like tunnel vision focused and we have our goals and we're like, okay. And then we take on too much. We're overextending ourselves. So that might be the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's a common pattern that you're seeing among business owners that's quietly limiting their growth?
I really have already mentioned it. They're working in the wrong space.
Yeah.
One of my goals is to help them understand what I call their super strengths. In other words, what are you really good at? What do you really love doing? And then the second question I ask, if they know, sometimes they don't really know. They think, well, I like this and I like that. Some people, they'll say, well, I love this. They know. But then I say, okay, let's look at how you're utilizing your time in your company. I'll tell you another story that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. I had a friend who was a computer service guy, smaller company, half dozen people or so. And when I started talking with him, I said, tell me a little bit about what you're doing in your company. I said, you kind of have business development or sales, and you have operations. Which one are you? He says, oh, I'm sales. Without any question, I'm sales. I said, well, tell me about it. He says, well, look, I'm not trying to brag, but if I get before other people, I close like 80% of everybody I talk to. And I said, wow, that's impressive. 80% close ratio. That's really, really good. I said, what about the operations thing? He said, no, I hate it. I'm terrible at it. I just can't stand it. And I said, all right, be honest right now in your company. What amount of time, energy, and focus are you putting toward sales versus operations? To my surprise, he came back and he said, I'm 85% operations and 15% sales. And I'm
Wow.
like, I don't get it. I don't understand. You kill it in sales and you hate operations and you're doing 85% operations. And then I just paused and I said, well, how's that working for you? Literally his head drops. He says, it's not. Right now, I hate my life. I'm not sure how much longer I can continue. I'm wondering if I should just sell my company. And I said, well, wait, before you do all that, what would happen if we could find you someone who could help you in operations, get you out of operations and got you back into sales? What difference would that make in your company? He said, if I did that, he said, I'd double my company in 2 years or less. And so, long story made short, he got his operational guy, he got back into sales, he got in some government contracts, and his company just took off. And so, probably the major one is you have business owners that are not really working in their strengths and they're exhausting themselves and diluting their effectiveness by trying to do too many things and things they're not really even good at. And frankly, they don't even like doing.
Yeah. And I'm sure not only did he increase the income in revenue in his business and he hired someone, but he was also found more joy and loved his life again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
When you do what you love
that's
doing, do what you love doing and you're good at doing, it's not hard. And you'll be successful because you're really good at it.
right. So what if somebody's listening going, okay, I don't know what my strengths are. I feel like I am juggling. I'm that guy that you just spoke about, that man that you just spoke about, that I'm in the position where I'm not loving my life. I feel like I am juggling a lot of hats and I'm spending most of my time doing the things I don't like, but I really don't know my full strengths. Like, what do you have a process you walk them
I
through?
do. Yeah. I have some assessments that I use. One of them is Strength Finders, if you're familiar with Strength Finders. And it evaluates your strengths. There are 34 of them. They're categorized in 4 different categories: relational strengths, influencing strengths, they're strengths that enable you to help others to take action, executing strengths, which are those that enable you to take action, and then thinking strengths, where kind of the strategy and kind of the creativity often lies. And when you understand what are your top strengths, often that really guides you as where you should put your energies and your efforts. Because if you do what you like doing and you do what you're good at doing, you're going to be successful. And then for me, after I get the owner position in that 80% of his strengths where he's working there, I'm going to try to help him build what I call a complementary dream team. There are some gaps. He's here, but he needs some people to do something else. And you want to, I say it this way sometimes, believe it or not, there are actually people that love doing what you hate doing, and they're really good at it. And you need to find those people and get them on your team. Sometimes they're already in the company. We just need to reallocate them. They're on the bus, but they're just not in the right seat. And so you try to build with some key leaders who begin to take over what I will call verticals, like maybe they take over the marketing or the sales or the deliverables or whatever, so that you're not trying to carry everything on your back as the owner. And you have these key people that you want to bring on your team. And then I've got a couple other steps past that.
Mm. So with everybody you've worked with, have you and your clients, is there a mindset shift that has the biggest impact on a leader's ability to scale their business?
If there is, I think it's tied to the leader himself or herself. Once again, most leaders carry the load of the company on their back. They feel the weight of that, and it's exhausting, really. And if I can get them to see, and I kind of make the difference between what I would think of as addition versus multiplication. If as a leader I'm carrying the load on my back, then I can add something, and then I can add something, and then I can add something, but I'm never really going to get the multiplication because I'm just one person. Whereas if I have 3 or 4 people, and I usually say 3 to 5 people that are key people within the organization, and I get them positioned properly, and they're going deeper and working harder in that one vertical, then what's happening, I'm going from addition, just me adding things, to now I have the potential to go to multiplication because I have 3 or 4 or 5 other people that are also adding things. And when you begin to, to put all that together, you're really multiplying and things can really just begin to take off.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier, they could be on the bus, but in the wrong seat. And I can
Correct.
imagine that when people are placed in the right seat, not only is the owner, the founder, CEO happy because he's focused on the things that, or the leaders, that specific leader in that department or company is working in their zone of genius, but also the seats that people that you're putting in the right seats now are happy. So the entire culture is shifting.
Everybody, it's a win. I say when you own a business and you have employees, it needs to be a win-win. Sadly, it's often a win-lose. The company wins, the employees lose. And they're not going to stay with you, but if they're competent, because they can go somewhere else. They will go somewhere else. But if it's a win-win, and what I mean by that is, hey, you're investing in them and you're developing them and you're giving them opportunity and you're appreciating and valuing them. That's a win for them. When that happens, they'll work hard, and it's also a win for the company.
So Dave, you shared with us how you've helped your clients realize what their strengths are, and you have processes for that. And then you also have shared how you've opened eyes to getting their time back, right? In order
Correct.
to bring it and put people in the right seats so everybody's happy and working in their zone of genius. How do you help clients move from knowing what to do to actually executing consistently?
Well, I think that's where the coaching comes in. As a partner, like a non-equity strategic partner, I'm really challenging them. A lot of times they will tell you what they know they should tell you and what they know they should do. And then when you start working with them, they're like, way over there. I'm like, what are you doing over there? Come back over here. You said you wanted to do this and you're chasing this rabbit, or you've picked this hat back up, or you're all over the place. We've got to get you really focused so that we create the roadmap and then we keep you on the roadmap so that you're moving forward. And sometimes you just need someone who will kind of call you out. I mean, I'm not unkind or whatever, but you told me what you wanted to do. And my job is to hold you accountable to what you said you wanted to do so you reach your destination.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about automation and AI tools because it's here. It's here to stay, and it's evolving very quickly. So how do you see coaching evolving with the rise of the AI tools? What's becoming more valuable and what becomes obsolete?
That's kind of a big Pandora's box that you could open. I think a lot of people right now are, I would say, in the early stages of implementing AI, and most of them are implementing to reduce workload or reduce employees and save cost. And there's value and benefit to that, but I think the real benefit of AI is more on the strategic level. And if you're really going to benefit from AI, you really need to give AI context. It's not just, because if you just ask a general question to AI that with no context, you get a general answer and it just goes out and grabs, kind of what's it. But if you provide the proper context where AI understands what your business plan is, what your philosophy is, what your voice, your tone, really getting, and it takes a lot of work to get all of that in there. But then you can begin to really benefit from the strategic insights that you can gain. And then even the execution side, which comes later, will be smoother and more on target or on point versus just sort of a generic. And I think we're seeing that already, kind of the pushback on that. Everybody sounds the same, and
Right.
you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And I know I've talked to a lot of business owners and leaders and founders and CEOs. And when we talk about AI, especially in the last recent, it seems like chat. And I'm always talking with chat. And I'm like, you sound like everybody else out there. And chat has really become very general and generic. And you can tell when people are using it all the time or too much.
And even when you use chat, you want to push back.
Yes, you want to push
because
back.
chat is really designed to sort of tell you what you want to hear. that was a great idea. Oh, that sounds so good. But it's a little flattering. And if you're not careful, you buy into the flattery instead of pushing back and saying, no, look, you're not, I don't want you to just to tell me what I want to hear. I need you to tell me what I need to hear. You push back, push back, push back, almost kind of fighting with Chad a little bit. And you'll find the quality of what you get goes way up.
Yeah, I've actually put in my personality. I'm like, you are a tell it like it is, no fluff coach and then once it responds, it's like, no fluff. I'm giving you this straight. And then I'll push back and push back multiple times to kind of drill down to where I find, okay. And then you still need to make it your own. You still got to make
Yep.
it your own. And there's other platforms that like a lot of people are moving to utilizing Claude more now,
Yep.
which has
Hmm.
become, I think chat kind of exceeded Claude for a while. Now Claude's kind of moving forward and there's always going to be new things coming out, right?
Sure.
And there's always, and we can get exhausted from trying to keep up with all the new things. Are you finding that amongst the people that you're working with? Like, oh my gosh, how do I keep up with all of it?
Well, it really varies. I mean, some people are afraid of AI. Some people, it depends on the industry, depends on the personality, depends on whether they see the value of it or not. So, and I found that, like, for example, I find I use Claude for certain things. I use Chat for other things because certain of the platforms do a little better job to me in one area than they do in another area. But it takes time, and that's probably the biggest drawback is most business owners don't have that quality or quantity of time to be able to experiment and really get comfortable with the platforms to get the full benefit out of them.
Yeah. And one thing that happened just yesterday that I've noticed, and I was like, aha, it's really important that people and businesses aren't relying on these platforms because yesterday chat was super glitchy and it wasn't putting out good output. And I'm like, what is going on? Oh yeah, we're going to, OpenAI is going to have glitches. We're going to have our point times where blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I hope that people are, leaning into understanding that this is not a tool you should be using full 100%. As yes, we can train it to our voice, but you also need to take it, have it creative ideas, have some fun with it, and then still make it your own because there are times where it's going to glitch out and you need to catch
Yeah.
that. You can't take it for what it's spitting out and go, this is the right decision to make inside of your business because you're going to have those. It's technology. It's going to have those
Yeah.
moments, right?
Well, I think anything you're super dependent upon, it
It's a
can
little
come back to
dangerous.
bite you.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, I think the more AI becomes prevalent, probably that personal touch and that connection is actually going to elevate in terms of value. So I don't know that you ever want to get away from having the personal touch. And even what chat provides, I hope people, I'm sure there are people that don't do this, I hope you can go back through it and kind of make it yours.
Yeah.
Kind of work through it because it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's more than just saving time, but it's really doing good quality work that I think people should aim toward.
Absolutely. So, are there ways that you're using besides the open AI with chat and Claude? Are there ways that you're using AI or advising your clients to use AI to help improve decision making, productivity, or growth?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the best thing is to help it or have it help you strategize about your market. So as you kind of explain to AI what you're doing, and you really get clarity on your ideal avatar, and even the language of your ideal avatar, and that kind of thing, the more context you can provide, then what can happen? It can give you creative ideas of how to. I'll give you an example in my world. One of the things, because I've kind of moved into this exit strategy world, I'm trying to develop some connections that can become feeders for me, and a couple of them are in the like the investment area. Like if you invest money for people, let's say you have you have an account that has $500,000 that they're investing for you. Well, if you sell your company, that $500,000 might go up to $5.5 million or $10.5 million, depending on the value of your company. That's much more valuable to an investor, to someone who's investing for you. So I'm reaching out to people who manage other people's money, who have businesses, and trying to make connections. And all that is going to be driven to a webinar, kind of an educational webinar, where I can kind of walk them through what are things you need to be thinking about, what are things you need to be concerned about if you're thinking about selling your business. And then once they sell it, obviously they're going to invest that money with them. So it's a kind of a win-win. I win, they win, and really win-win-win. And the client wins. The other area I'm doing is with M&A people, mergers and acquisition people. A lot of people in that space focus more on the transactional piece. They'll help you sell your business, but they don't want to spend time helping you get ready to sell your business because they don't make any money there. It's more in the transaction. That's where they make their money. So I'm reaching out to those people and saying, hey, if you have people that come to you and they want your help in selling the business, but they're not quite ready, and you want to send them to me, once I help them get ready, I'll send them back to you. So, and that was really something that I used, chat to actually help me put together a whole process of how do I reach out to those people, make my connections, have them drive traffic to me, and begin to build those relationships. And so, that's more kind of how I'm using it. And that's probably how I would, encourage my clients to use it as well, depending on what industry they're in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm seeing a lot of like AI and automation is great on the back end systems, but it's not going to replace the relational, piece of doing business. That's not going to go anywhere. And the network still matters. We've all heard the term network is your net worth.
Yep.
And it's very true. And for us introverts, it's a little harder, but it's really important that we're keeping that at the forefront and not relying on automation because, like you said, like building those connections, utilizing AI to share with you how the strategy behind it, and then it's all testing, and we're the ones that get to test it. And then AI is going to learn from our testing what it's sharing with us to do. So it's kind of like an ongoing circle
right.
that
Ever evolving.
Yeah, very evolving. I'd like to talk about growth a little bit. You've been doing this for a while, a long time. You've been in business for a long time. You've pivoted a couple times. So I would like to know from you, for those who are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, how do you know when it's time to pivot and make a little tweak or change?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there's a magic approach. For me, like when I first started coaching and I would mention to people I'm coaching, they're like, athletics? I mean, because that term was a newer term and they didn't really know what it meant, because even though athletes have, I mean, if you're a golfer, you might have 3 or 4, physical coach, food coach. I mean, you have all kinds of coaches, but not in business. And then what happened was as more people jumped in, it became very what I would call red ocean, if you're familiar with that term.
Yes, red ocean versus ocean.
Yeah, there were just a bunch of people jumping in, and frankly, we all sounded the same, and
And
I
there's
just
undercutting of prices.
yes,
Everybody,
yeah,
yes.
and I just found myself really not. That wasn't very motivating to me because I didn't want to constantly have to differentiate myself from someone who's kind of doing the same thing I'm doing. He's just a different person. So that kind of drove me, and part of it too, all these iterations, like the leadership space, that's something I've always done well with, and I've already had a lot of success in. So it wasn't like I was, just pulling it in. It was kind of aligned with me to start with. The scaling and structuring and personnel and development of personnel, that's something I've always done and always done well with. So as I kind of came across this red ocean concept, I started thinking, well, certainly there's a space out there that I could kind of differentiate myself and maybe get out ahead. I like to think of it like, you're surfing and you're really paddling hard and you're catching the wave and getting ahead of the wave so the wave will then carry you. And that's really how I saw the exit strategy. The other thing for me that was attractive is it's not a one size fits all. I'm kind of a boutique coaching consulting company. The max clients I take a year is 12. Okay. So a really small little constituency, but high level service and impact and help. And so I don't need a ton of clients, but I need the right clients. And with me, I like variety. I've always had a tendency to get bored. It doesn't matter what I do. I reach a level where I'm thinking, I could do this, but it's kind of boring. I need a challenge. So for me, I like the variety. I'll give you an example. I have one client right now who's a printer, and he wants to sell his business. He's been at it 20, 25 years. He really doesn't need the money, and he's going to sell his business to a couple of his employees. And one of the things he's doing with his strategy is he's going to get his price, but he's going to finance the sale for his employees. So he's going to get the interest on top of his price. And it's going to be over a period of time, say 10 years or so. And he's going to spread out his tax liabilities over those years so it doesn't hit him all at once. And then the big thing for him is, okay, what's next? What are you going to? Because you've been working all your life. He's still fairly young. And you need to have something, it might be a little different type business. And we're talking about maybe real estate investment, like some properties or whatever. But the idea is, that's one experience. The next guy I talk to may be a completely different person who wants to do something completely different. And I like that because it kind of, is challenging for me to help them do what they want to accomplish.
Yeah, you found a way to keep the excitement going in your
Yep.
business where sometimes we can zone in on something and then we get bored, that we're wondering, like, is it time to pivot? And it may not be, I feel like if you're in boredom, that is not the time to pivot. Like, you don't make those decisions because you might feel like you're bored in your business. You find a way to bring the excitement back in. And you found that way by,
Yep.
opening your niches up. You niched into the exit strategy, but you work with different types of
Well, and
business on that
I
exit
still use the leadership development and the scaling and all those things because they're really all, it's kind of really a natural extension of what I've been doing. It's not like a completely different lane.
Right. And that's what I wanted to really, that's why I asked you that question about pivoting, because I think it's important. I think a lot of business owners can get nervous about, oh, maybe we need to pivot, but what is that going to look like? And what are people going to think? And it's not necessarily, like, I like to replace the word pivot with evolve. It may not be you're pivoting completely. You're just adding a new product, or you're adding a new
Yeah.
service, or
Yeah.
you're adding a new target market, or you're switching your target market, but you're selling the same product or service. Like, there's different ways to pivot without throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. I
And
use the word iterations because I
yes,
think,
iterations.
yeah.
Yes. I love that. Iterations, evolution, like, we're all evolving and growing. And as you're growing, you're going to iterate what's next for you. You're going to evolve into what's next for you. So that's
And
why I
that's
really
true for
wanted
me
to,
also, not just with the business, but with clients.
yeah.
I'm at a level now where I'm looking for a certain level of client, like the last client that I have, has I've received. He has 4 companies, and he wants to go kind of down to 3, but he really is trying to position himself so that he can step out. And the way he words it is, look, if something happened to me, I'd just leave my wife a big pile of mess. I don't want to do that. So he's trying
Mm,
to get everything kind of lined up so that it would be easy to sell or somebody else could run it or whatever. But when you're working with someone with 4 companies, that's a whole different level than someone who's just kind of a startup, trying to figure out how to, what gate to look at, which one to walk through, and all that. So
right.
I like, the fact that my clientele has grown as well as my coaching company has grown.
Yeah. And that's because of all the work that you've done
Yeah.
to get here. Yeah. How are your clients finding you, Dave? How are you visibility wise, marketing wise? Are you doing it? Is it all referral based at this point, or what have you done to get to where you are now? What has it been organic? Have you done paid marketing? What's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you?
Yeah. Obviously referrals is always a good thing. Lately, I've been on a lot of podcasts, so like yours, and I actually have picked up one client from that. I have another one that is probably going to pick up. We met yesterday, and we're going to meet again next week and kind of get zeroed in on the scope of what she wants. So that's done well for me. I have some help. I have a team of people that help me. It's more of a contractual kind of relationship. But I do some media, so I do usually 12 video shorts a month that where I'm just touching upon key things. I write 4 blogs a month, usually share a podcast or 2 that I've been on, maybe a leadership statement that I've found or a testimonial that someone's given me. So something's going out almost every day. And the 4 platforms I'm on are LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And so I've got a lot of stuff that is kind of going out. And then I'm moving toward this. I talked about this educational workshop. It's probably going to be a paid workshop where I'm going to charge to come to it because I want to kind of weed out people that are just tire kickers and want people that are more serious that will come look, business owners that are willing to pay, at least a modest amount to come to the workshop. And then from that, there will be a CTA where if they want to, do kind of a consult call, we can do that and take a look at their business and talk about possibly doing business together. And so because I don't need a ton of clients, and frankly, don't want a ton of clients because I've kind of been there and done the 60, 80-hour thing with 100 employees and all that before. I'm trying to keep my footprint pretty lean and clean and simple and easy to execute. I farm out everything I don't like doing. I only keep the things I like doing. And all that media stuff I just talked about, I have it down right now where I can do everything I do for the whole month in about an hour and a half per month.
Wow.
and then give it over to someone who will then, brand it and post it and all that kind of thing. But my footprint is pretty small in terms
Yeah.
of the amount of time that it takes from me.
Yeah. So you're, well, I love this because you're actually doing what you're telling your clients to do,
Exactly.
leading by example, and you're actually, walking the walk and walking the talk. And I love that you shared too. Thank you for this, is that what you're doing for your content and for getting your visibility out there, it takes you about an hour and a half, because you're not doing the editing, you're not doing the posting, you're not doing that technical side piece of it, where if you were, it wouldn't be an hour and a half. You're
No.
writing the blogs, you're sending them off, somebody else handles it, posts it, brands it, you're recording the videos, you've got them mapped out. It's one, you might do it in one session, I don't know. So if
I
those of
do.
you
I
listening,
batch. Yeah. Yeah.
that you batch, and you know the word batch, like
Yeah.
you're batching your content, which I think is, we haven't talked about that on this podcast, I don't think at all. And for those of you who are CEOs, founders, leaders, and you need to be the face of your business, because there's so much now more, I don't know if you're seeing this, but I've been seeing it, founder-led marketing matters these days, where more founders need to be the face of the company, because the businesses, it's great to have that brand, but to have a face, people connect with the
Yeah.
person.
And once again, I think, what I always tell people is, find your lane. But if you're the leader, you need some visibility. But most leaders, I think what they do is they exhaust themselves by trying to do too much. Now, I'm reasonably techie for an older guy, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time doing stuff I don't like doing. Like, I just use my phone. I have a green screen and a lapel mic, so I get good sound. And to do my video shorts, I do 12 of them a month. It takes me, I mean, frankly, I very rarely have to retake one. So 60 seconds times 12,
Right.
and I'm done. And then I
Yeah.
just
And you don't
upload it.
overthink it. You just
Yeah.
do it. You just put it
And it
out there
doesn't
and
have to
do
be
it.
perfect. Yeah. It
Right.
doesn't
You're
have
going to
to be
get better
perfect.
and better and better every time you do it.
Yeah.
So I love that we had this conversation, because we haven't had that on this podcast. And I think that's important for people to know, because they can get overwhelmed with things like that, and they can build a huge team around them, which they don't need. It's super simple. Your cell phone, your lapel mic, a green screen, or wherever you are. Don't even get that, you don't even have to get that technique
No,
if you don't
no.
need to. And then just record it and send it off to somebody that can edit it and post it. And you're showing
Yeah.
up consistently with an hour and a half of your time. So what have been some challenges that you've faced along the way in your growth, and how did you overcome them? I can have one or two. We don't need a ton of them, but
I think probably one of the biggest challenges is just really getting clarity about who you are and what you want to do. A lot of times, when you start out, particularly, you have maybe a skill set that you're bringing into your coaching and you enjoy this, but you're not always sure exactly how to, I'll say it, to position it. But, it needs, if you have a business, I mean, look, a business eats your lunch. I mean, in terms of it becomes your life if you're not careful. And I really like the idea of kind of getting the clarity up front as much as possible. The way I try to help people is kind of, all right, project out and say, all right, when you get this business built and it's working the way you want it to work, what's it look like? And then once you get that, let's reverse engineer back to where you are, and let's put together a plan a roadmap that will get you from where you are to where you want to go. That does a number of other things. It becomes kind of a decision grid where, when things come along, there are always shiny objects that come along. You can say, no, that doesn't really help me get to where I want to go. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And frankly, saying no sometimes is as hard as it is. That's the best thing you can do, because the more you take on, the more you chase rabbits, then it takes you longer to get to where you want to go.
yeah.
And, how much do I want to work? That's an important thing to me. How much do I want to make? What kind of quality of lifestyle do I want? I tell business owners all the time, if you don't pre-design your business, what you will do is you will develop a business that takes over your life and
Mm,
controls you. What you really want to do is you want to actually decide what kind of lifestyle you want to have up front, and then you want to design a business that fits your lifestyle versus building the business and then trying to fit your lifestyle into the business, because the second way doesn't work very well.
yeah. So if you had if I could give you a magic wand, Dave, and you could wave it over one challenge or issue you're having right now, that you go poof and it disappears, what would that be and why?
I think really just getting before the right people, kind of that higher level client, because They're out there. There are a ton of them out there, but it takes time to develop relationships with them. And I think in the coaching business, a lot of people have programs, and it's kind of, I call it, cookie cutter kind of programs. That's not what I'm doing. Mine's very customized to the individual. So I may meet 2 or 3 times with someone that is considering having me become their coach before I ever really get down to, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is because I'm really developing a relationship. I'm also sort of testing the waters to see, all right, do I really want to work with this person? Because my engagements are typically longer. On the short side, they would be 6 months, but they could be 2 or 3 years. And, so part of what I'm asking myself is this someone that I want to work with for 2 years?
Yeah. It's a
And
commitment.
if I meet with them several times and get to know them a little bit better, I can figure that out. And I may pass, not because don't want to hire me, or not because they don't have the money, but because I just don't think this is going to work for me, because there's something about personality or whatever that doesn't quite gel.
Yeah.
So
That's why
getting,
it's like the first date. Everybody's on their
yeah,
first best
yeah,
behavior on the first date, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got to get to know them a little bit before you, kind of make your,
And I think it helps them too,
yeah,
because,
absolutely. It's got to be a win.
they're going to spend thousands of dollars with you. They want to know, that, hey, this is someone I really can take the ride with. I
Yeah,
call it the entrepreneurial journey with.
yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you, Dave, and Penn Coaching Consulting?
You know, my business plan is very, very simple. A dozen clients. I have a certain range I'm in now. I'm trying to raise my range, and I'm probably just going to cap out, have a waiting list. If I really have a lot of people, then I'll just up the price again. That kind of weeds out.
Yeah.
But I have 3 basic goals in my life. Like I say, this is my third career. So my goals are pretty simple. Freedom, financial freedom, enough income to kind of, live comfortably. I'm not trying to live rich. Uh, Live where I want to live. Okay. Second is impact. I really like impacting leaders. I like helping leaders. It's kind of, really what I just love doing. I'm passionate about. And then the third one for me is generosity. And I like giving to organizations and situations that I can help and support. One of my big goals right now is I'm at the point where I have 7 grands. So one of my big goals of my life in terms of generosity is I would like to be able to set aside a big chunk of money for each
Mhm.
grand, so that, not for college, because I'm gonna let their parents help them with that, but when they marry, and they're all fairly young yet, but when they marry and they're ready to buy their first home, I would like to be able to help to provide a substantial down deposit for their first home, down payment for their first home. So
I love
that's a lot of what drives me.
Yeah. Yeah. You always have to know that why that makes you cry.
Yeah,
And I think that's important. And I love that yours is your grandbaby. So thank you
yeah,
for sharing that. Yeah. So how can people connect with you and reach out to you and learn and know more about what
sure,
your
yeah. Well,
opportunity?
obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's under David Pennington on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. My website is Penn Coaching, PENN coaching.com. Lots of information there, blogs, ebooks, videos. They're all there. There's a discovery little tab if you want to have a chat. If you want to just email me directly, that's fine too. Dave, Dave, at Penn Coaching, PENN coaching.com. And I'd be glad to just have a conversation. For me, it's that. It's just a conversation and learn about you, see if we would be a good fit, see if you might have interest in working together. If so, fine. If not, hopefully I'll be able to provide a few insights or direct you to someone else that might can help you better. And I'm good with that. I like helping people. And so, don't feel like it's a big pressure call or anything.
Yeah, I love that. We work the same way. We're like, if we can help you, great. If not, we're going to try and see if we know somebody that can. And
Yep.
it's just one more relationship and connection you have, and you never know where that door is going to lead in the future. So again, it's all about relationships, right?
That's true.
So for those of you listening, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Hello. We're grateful you're here. Please share this if you know of anybody that think would benefit from hearing Dave today and about learning more about Penn Coaching to support them in their exit strategy of their business if they're considering moving forward with a sale. And if you just know that he provided valuable information that could support them, please share this episode with them. This is how we're moving forward in our mission over the course of 5 years. Unfortunately, more than about 90% of businesses fail, over 50% fail. So we want to make sure that we're flipping that number. And by having Dave on here today and him sharing his time and our guests that we have on the show, they're helping us support us in our mission to support more businesses in growing and thriving and succeeding. If you're here from listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, thank you. We're grateful. And if you know of anybody that would benefit from hearing Dave today, please share the episode, send it out. And if you can leave a review, we'd love it. Be, greatly appreciative, preferably 5 stars. That helps the platform support us and Dave on pushing this episode out to more people. Please connect with him. As you can hear, he's pretty amazing. He shared a lot of incredible information here today. Would love to support him more. So please reach out to him, connect with him, go to penncoaching.com and go find him on LinkedIn. We also have all of Dave's information and links in the show notes. So you get to learn more about him with his bio and all that good stuff. Dave, before I let you go, thank you for your time. Is there anything that you'd like to share or say that we didn't talk about, or I didn't get to ask you about today?
I was thinking, I'd say one thing: if you have a company that you are thinking about selling or passing on to your kids, that's a whole different approach, selling to employees. But the idea is, I think most people wait too late to take action. It often will take you a couple years to really position your company where the value is high and the sellability is attractive to buyers. And a lot of people wait, and they think they can just put it on the market and it's going to sell, but they haven't done the prep work. And when you don't do the prep work, your value is going to go down and the attractiveness to buy your business is going to go down. So don't wait too long. Take action early. That can be a tremendous help, and it's a whole lot less stressful too.
Yeah, that's a great point. We didn't talk about that much. So if you think long term and you're like, you know what, I want to have an exit strategy, and you are a few years, maybe 2 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years in front of you, then reach out to Dave, connect with him. Even if it's a little further out, the knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the better planning you can do, the more money you're going to get for it, right? Better prepared you are. So thank you, Dave, so much for your time. Thank you all for listening to us here on the Business Growth Spotlight. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.